So once you have everything set up, you've got your motors and sensors set up, and you're in the correct language, the next step is to make sure that you know what you're programming. And what I'm going to be looking at is number one. It says run right motor for 5 seconds at half power, then stop. So this is just a really simple program to kind of help get you used to the process of programming. And the first thing I want to do is talk to you about comments. And to comment out text, you can, for a single line comment, you can do 2 forward slashes. And so if I type something out, type, you can see that it's just green text. And green text is not read by the computer. So this is for human use only. Notice when I go to the next line, the text is not green because it is not a comment. I didn't use those 2 slashes. And so in order to do a multi-line comment, you can do /*, and then it's going to continue giving you that multi-line comment, and then you can close out your comments by using */, and you'll notice that task main has been highlighted again. So just be aware, using comments is actually really helpful for troubleshooting actual program because you can turn on and off sections of the program to help figure out what the problem is. But in this case, I'm just going to use the comments to help frame out my program. And this is referred to as pseudocode. So this is fake code, and this is solely for the programmer to understand the structure of the program so that whenever it is time to actually program, you have a better idea of what it is you need to do. And starting out, your pseudocode is going to be simple, but this is just a learning process because programming does not remain simple for very long. And so it's best that you have a good foundational knowledge of how to troubleshoot and solve problems because not everything is going to be just turn on a motor for 5 seconds. So that leads me back to the program that you are working on, which is turn on the right motor for 5 seconds at half power, then stop. And so I need to think about this sequentially. The first thing that needs to happen is I need to turn on the right motor, okay? And then after the right motor is turned on, I want to go ahead and run that motor for 5 seconds. And so in programming, specifically using natural language, the command for that is wait. So wait I'm going to number 5 seconds. And after the motor is on for 5 seconds, I now want to turn off the right motor. So these are my bones. This is just a frame to help me kind of get my thoughts in order to understand what it is that I'm doing. It did give me a power, so it said half power. And if you're not aware, full power for Robot C using the VEX EDR platform is 127. So full power is 127. So half power would be about 63. So that's going to be the value that I use in my code. So now that my pseudocode is worked out, the next step is to go ahead and fill out my task main, because this task main is where the computer is going to start reading the code. So I could spell. Okay, so this is basically letting the computer know, ignore all the green stuff. This is where you're going to actually start getting the information. And then we've got these 2 curly braces. Now, please make sure that you're using the curly braces. If you're using parentheses, it will not work. So this marks the beginning. So this curly brace, open curly brace, marks the start of program. So, and then this curly brace down here, I guess I should say it marks the beginning and end of the task main. So marks the end of task main. So I should rephrase that, of task main. Okay. So Just a reminder, once again, green text is for the human. It's not going to read this green text because I have commented out. Next step is I'm going to return back over to natural language, and the first thing we want to do is go ahead and start that motor. So I'm going to drag that motor over here. So I've got start motor. So specifically the motor that I am starting is the right motor. And right motor, notice that I spelled it with that camel case, so lowercase r, uppercase m, just like I did up here at the top. And so this is going to call my pragma code. And so anytime right motor is referenced, it calls back up to the pragma code and it checks and it says, oh, okay, that's a motor and it's in port 2. That's what I'm going to turn on or off. The speed for this, I'm going to say is 63 because I designated it as half power. And then after I've got my start motor, the next part of the program is the wait for 5 seconds. So you can see I've got my wait over here. I'm going to drag my wait time over and designate that as 5 seconds. Finally, I want to stop my motor. And the motor port that I'm stopping is the right motor. I'm going to clean up my curly braces here. So if your formatting gets really odd and everything's tabbed out weird and hard to read, you've got this fix formatting button and it cleans everything up. Notice that it indented and put everything in between those curly braces, so now everything looks nice and clean and makes sense to the user. And so this is number 1, turning on the right motor at half power, 63 for 5 seconds, and then stopping. I would recommend that you compile the program often in case you encounter errors. And whenever you compile the program, it also saves the program. So if you change something in the program, you'll notice that you get this asterisk here that tells you that, hey, the program has been changed and it's not been saved. And anytime you hit compile program, it saves the program and it also checks for errors. And so one of the most common errors I get is spelling mistakes or spelling mistakes. And so a lot of kids, they spell motor wrong. So M-O-T-E-R, that's incorrect. And that's not how I spelled it up here. So now whenever I compile the program, I'm going to get an X. And so if I look in my compiler errors, it's referencing line number 18. You can see the X is on line number 18, and it says undefined variable right motor with an ER. Short assumed. And so I can see right here that this MOTER is not spelled correctly and it's referencing something up here. It is important to note that a robot C is not spell checking this. If I spelled motor incorrectly in my pragma and I spell it incorrectly here, it's going to say, okay, that works. So now it moved on to the next line. So this is not spell checking. This is just checking to make sure that you've referenced what you were talking about in the pragma code. So it's really important that you understand that distinction because you can name your motors whatever you want. It just needs to be consistent. So consistency is very important whenever you're doing this. So you can see motor spelled wrong here. I've also got motor spelled wrong here. It's just important that you remain consistent in how you spell everything out. So I guess if you're bad at spelling, at least be consistent in your poor spelling.